Our next speaker is Moji Igun from Blue Daisy Consulting. And Moji is, I think I got to know Moji on Instagram. I believe she came to the event last year as well. And that's when I first met her in person. She has this consulting firm based in Seattle that helps businesses with sustainability strategies, particularly zero waste in the office. And I've been to some of her talks, and she just has a really wonderful way of sort of making information accessible to people, which is not always true in the sustainability sphere. And so I want to say thank you to Moji for being here with us today. And if you have any questions for Moji, please put them in the chat box, and I will ask a few after her conversation. So Moji.
Can you all hear me? Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I am so excited to be here. And just like Ali said, I was a participant this time last year at this summit. And I remember it actually very vividly. I took the bus down from Seattle, where I live, to Tacoma for the very first time ever. I had never been to Tacoma before. And I just immediately felt at home with the group of people that were in that space. I came to learn more from other women in sustainability and to make connections with people working in this space and working in sustainability in business. And so I had an amazing day. I met so many people. We had so many connections and networking opportunities. And I remember right after the event that I just had so much energy that I just ended up walking around Tacoma, around the campus right nearby the event space, just because I had so much energy and I didn't know what to do with myself before taking the bus back home. So just saying, it was a wonderful, wonderful day. And I share all of that because I know that we're all in a very different space right now. We're not buzzing with that kind of energy. And I know that the predominant feeling that I feel most days is really just exhaustion. I'm just tired all of the time. Like, we are 8 months into a pandemic. Like, that alone is a scary sentence to say. The way that we live life is so different. The way that we can do things, can't do things has just drastically changed. We're also 4 months into the Black Lives Matter movement, at least here in the United States. There have been protests that have been happening every single day since June, and not just here in the States, but where my family is from in Nigeria, there have been 2 weeks of End SARS protests along the same lines of ending police brutality against Black people. So that's another heavy thing that we're dealing with. And then on top of all of that, there's an election in 10 days. I don't know if you guys forgot or not. I tried to. But it's arguably the biggest, most high stakes election in definitely my lifetime, if not all time. So that is a lot of stuff going on. And then to think of all the personal things I'm sure we're all going through, whether it's job changes, financial insecurity, childcare shifts or changes altogether, it's a lot to handle. And so just having us all be here together talking about sustainability and the future makes me incredibly hopeful. And I'm really excited to share this space with all of you. And so on one hand, we have the heaviness of the world and all the things going on. And on the other hand, it's the hope and the pull to make the world a better, more equitable, more sustainable place to live for all of us. And so I've been reflecting on that a lot. And the question that comes into my mind is, okay, so where do we go from here? We have all of this stuff that we're thinking about and balancing. What do we do next? And so that's something that's been on my brain for basically the past year. And I've come to the conclusion that I think that it's going to be different for everyone, and there's no prescriptive answer. But I think that we need to look in 2 directions in order to figure out where we go from here. So it's not left and right, but it's inwards, and forwards. And so I want to talk about each of those and then give us some next steps. So looking inwards, I can see a few of you on my screen here and just do a quick raise of hands. How many of you have felt overwhelmed in the past year? Definitely, yeah. How many of you have felt just stressed, overall stressed? Yeah, exactly. And how many of us have felt like we've had the time and space to reflect and be clear-headed and imagine what a sustainable future looks like for all of us? Yeah, I like this kind of movement. That's where I'm at too. It's hard to think about what comes next and what our dream, ideal, sustainable future would be like if we're overwhelmed and stressed all of the time. So that's why I stress the importance of looking inwards. And I know we're here for sustainability in business, and I promise this is all connected. I'm weaving it in. So looking inwards for me really requires going very intensely into self-care. And so self-care, I'm sure we've all heard that term before, and I don't mean it by facials and pedicures and manicures, even though that's wonderful, and I miss being able to just go do that without making some kind of crazy arrangement. But with self-care, I really mean doing what you need to do in order to take care of yourself. So I know that seems very obvious and very plain, but I really want to stress that really taking care of yourself. So whether that means setting some boundaries, whether that's personal or professional, or that might look like just saying no to tasks that don't add value to your life, just refusing to do it. Or it could look like trying therapy if that's something that you've never done before, or getting back into it if you can find a way to make it accessible. Or just eating and drinking water. That stuff is really important to keeping us sane and being sustainable ourselves. And so that is important to me, not only just as a human, but that was really important to me when I was thinking about my business. And so, like Ali said, my business name is Blue Daisy Consulting, and there's like a short answer and a long answer to how I got to that name. The short answer is my favorite color is blue, and Daisy is a play off of my middle name, Oludaisi. That's the easy answer. But the more layered answer that really integrates into the values that I hold and that I try to live out with the work that I do is to actually think about a daisy flower. So if you really envision what that flower is, it's really cool. It's two flowers for the price of one. It's the inner yellow part, which are called disc florets, if you're into plant biology, and it's what holds the whole flower together. And it's the inner core piece. And then there are the white pieces that extend outwards, and those are called ray florets, and those extend out into the world. And so the thinking behind that is that with sustainability, no matter what form you're thinking of, whether it's zero waste and you're working with me or any other kind of sustainability, there's the inner piece that holds it all together. And then there's the outer piece that extends outwards into the world and causes those amazing ripple effects. So my question or my prompt for all of you is to think about what holds you together. What is your core and keeps you sane and whole? And when I think about that inner piece, I really think about reconnecting to the land and life around us, like so many Indigenous people around the world have done for all of time and continue to do into the present. And so, yes, I love it. Meditation, visualization, exactly. And so it's all about nurturing that personal relationship with ourselves and nature in general, and doing that inner healing work that will help us get past the day-to-day stuff in business, whether it's sending invoices or accounts receivable, accounts payable, marketing strategies, or just putting out fires that business owners have to put out every day. getting past that and really visualizing, what does sustainability look like for you as an individual, for your business, and for our society as a whole. And so that's so important, because how can we be expected to have the capacity to do that if we haven't taken care of ourselves first? So once we've taken care of all of the overwhelm and the stress, and we've kind of gotten through and past that, even if it's a work in progress, one of the things I love to look at is thinking about and reflecting on what is our role in all of this sustainability, social change stuff that's going on. And so a framework that I often refer to is something that was created by a woman named Deepa Iyer. She created this framework called, I think it's called Mapping Our Roles in Social Change Ecosystems. And I'm happy to share a link at the end of this. But it just shows that if we're looking for a world that is more just and more equitable and more sustainable, we all have a role to play. And so that inner reflection, that inner work, allows us to see that role more clearly. So some examples of roles could be, maybe you're a caregiver. Maybe you're the one that your friends come to and they decompress and you solve their problems and you help them through things. Maybe you are more of a storyteller and you can gather a bunch of information and spit it back out into the world in a way that's engaging and helps people see the big picture. Or maybe you are a frontline responder and you're the one who's out in marching or chaining yourself to a pipeline or whatever it may be. All of those things are so incredibly important. And so we need all of that. And so finding your role in that can be really valuable in focusing yourself in on your actions. And maybe it's the Aquarius in me, but I am very comfortable in doing things that can be perceived as embarrassing. So whether that is, before COVID, I would bring like a Tupperware container to my favorite froyo shop instead of using the single-use containers there, and they allowed me to do it, and it helped me be sustainable in my specific way that makes me feel good. Or maybe it's bringing all of my containers and bags to the grocery store so I can fill up in the bulk aisle. Or maybe sometimes it's oversharing on social media about the struggles of being a business owner or just a human right now. I do that a lot. But doing things that feel embarrassing or hard or stressful is really where I thrive. And so that's where I focus my energy, on saying things that people are sometimes too scared or hesitant to say, or trying things that people are too hesitant to try. That's not for everyone. So looking for what your strengths are and what you feel good in is a perfect way for you to figure out your role in all of this. And so I talked a lot about inwards and reflecting inwards and thinking about yourself. But we also need to look forwards. We can't just be by ourselves and hole in for forever. So looking forward, even as the imperfect humans that we are, we can just start where we are, use what we have, and do what we can. And that's one of my favorite quotes. It's by an African-American tennis player named Arthur Ashe. And I come back to that quote in all of my workshops and a lot of things that I do. But oftentimes when we talk about sustainability, people often get overwhelmed because it's such a huge topic. There is so much to cover and so many problems to solve. So starting where you are, using what you have, and doing what you can is how you can take it one step at a time. And so, like I said, sustainability is a huge umbrella topic. I also like to refer to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. That's one framework to look at the breadth of sustainability. So not only is it renewable energy and clean water and zero waste, but it's also thinking about making sure people have access to education, and ensuring that no one lives in poverty, and making sure that no one goes hungry. All of that is sustainability. So there's no one way that it looks. There are so many different things to explore. And so for me, I like to focus in on zero waste. And I do that because it is, well, first of all, I think about my personal sustainability journey. My family is from Nigeria, and so we understand the importance of being resourceful and not having everything that you might need. But I also come from suburban Michigan. That's where I grew up. And so coming from, honestly, excess and people buying things to fit in or be cool. So I kind of have this duality that comes with my upbringing. And when I learned about the zero waste movement on social media a few years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, everything just clicked for me, because even though it's kind of almost comical to think about fitting all of your trash in a mason jar or not throwing anything away, the thinking behind it is just being resourceful with the things that the earth gives us. So whether it's the natural resources that come out of the ground, not just squandering them and then throwing them into a landfill, whether it's the time that we have, whether it's the people on this planet, not wasting human resources and actually valuing everyone as equal and valuable inherently. That's all a zero waste mindset that I have shifted my living to think about. And so zero waste is more than just trash. Like I was saying, it's really a broad mindset of thinking. And so I like to share it as such and not only talk about the trash piece of things. And so that might not be what resonates with you. So I definitely invite you to explore beyond zero waste, even though that's what I like to talk about 99% of the time. Thinking about what really resonates with you. So maybe that's renewable energy. Maybe that you want to have solar panels all over your house and that's how you want to live. Go deep into that and see all the ways that it's interconnected with all of the other pieces of sustainability. And so with all of that, it's thinking about the way that you look at sustainability. It's not only about the angle that you come at it with, it's also thinking about it holistically. So I like to think about things in systems. I studied engineering, so everything is a problem that can be solved with pieces and puzzle pieces. So I think about it at an individual level. So let's just use an example of composting. You can attack composting at an individual level, at a business level, and also at an institutional level. So individually, that can look like putting a compost bin on your kitchen counter and making sure that you use it, which is an amazing place to start. Moving it into your business, that can be transitioning all of your, if you're in food service, transitioning all of your containers into compostable containers so that it's easy and you don't have to sort anything. It all goes into one place. And then institutionally, that could be advocating for policy on the local or regional or national level to make sure that industrial composting is accessible to everyone. So all of those different directions are, or angles of attack are all equally important, and it's thinking about them all at the same time. Because how cool would it be if everyone composts at home and every restaurant had compostable containers and every city in the country had composting available to them? That's the kind of world that I dream about when I envision a sustainable future. Yes, my dream, exactly. So I think it's safe to say that the world isn't exactly where we want it to be, whether it's politically or if it's personally or in terms of sustainability. We have lots of work to do, that's the truth. But in order to transform the world, we really need to tap into our imaginations and make sure we have that space to reflect inwards and learn more about ourselves before we radiate out into the world. And so as business owners or people just involved in business in general, we're very conditioned to do things quickly and efficiently and get things done, task after task after task. And so it's pushing back on that and making the space to think differently and shift the way that we view the world. And so even though we don't know when this pandemic is going to end, which it will end, just we don't know when, we know that it would be a real shame if nothing actually changed after all of this. If we just went back to normal, whatever that is to people, or if we just didn't do anything differently going forward. And so I want us to all, whenever you have a minute, to just picture where we want to be this time next year. What does that look like for you? And if anything that I said in the past few minutes has resonated with you, I have a couple of action steps, a little bit of homework. I want you to set aside 2 chunks of time for yourself. So the first one is going to be a date with yourself, whether that's 15 minutes or an hour or whatever chunk of time that you can dedicate to just focus on yourself, whether that's if you like to meditate, meditate. If you like to walk your dog and that gives you peace, do that, or cooking or cleaning or whatever feels good for you, do that thing and really think about if you're taking care of yourself and how you can continue to do that. And also reflect on that role of social change that I mentioned. What role do you play? Are you a healer, a caregiver, a guide, a storyteller? Think about what that looks like for you. And then the second piece I have is to, as we're networking today, I know we have some time to get into small groups or whatever that looks like later on today, but find someone that you can partner up with. Maybe it's 1 or 2 people, and follow up with them and set some time to think about what a sustainable future looks like, whether it's at your individual level or your business level or society as a whole. Give yourself some space to dream a little bit and share that with someone. And so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my social media handles in the chat. And I would love if after you do those dates or as you're planning those dates, if you could share with me or with anyone what comes up and where you think you're going from here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Moji. Moji is one of my favorite people to follow on Instagram. She always has like this fun sort of mix of like real serious things that she talks about and then like her cat and her plants. So she's a great follow. So if you're on Instagram or Twitter, follow along there. You said 2 things that really jumped out at me that I just want to reiterate. The first one is that knowing your strengths and knowing where you do best, where you do your best work, how you do your best work is really key in creating sustainability for yourself in your business. So if you don't work well under pressure, but you set yourself up with contracts that have constant deadlines, then your business itself is going to become unsustainable because you're going to burn out. And so, and the same is true of advocacy work. So finding ways that to line up what you feel competent doing, what you feel comfortable doing with the type of work that you want to do is really key for sort of longevity in this sphere. In my past breakout group, I was talking about how I used to work in a lot of the same spheres as Shinpei, and that I had to leave because I couldn't keep putting the energy into fighting those systems that were not set up the way that I thought that they should be or were unethical. And I had to leave, and I started working for myself because I could control a lot more of my environment, and that was a choice, thankfully, that I was able to make, but that I never wanted to work for myself. It wasn't a goal, but I was so frustrated being in that sphere for 10, 15 years of just kind of feeling really worn down that I had to make that choice if I was going to stay in business and not just be a stay-at-home mom. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Stay-at-home moms are amazing. That if I wanted to go back to work, it had to be in a different environment where I wasn't constantly being exhausted like by my environment itself. So if you have the capacity to change your environment, if you have the capacity to literally change your space at work to make it feel more cozy or more energetic, if you have the capacity to work in your community to create better systems, then that's going to help in the longevity and the sustainability of both your business and your advocacy. And the second thing is that idea of dreaming big. And this has been honestly a real challenge for me lately, because like you said, you're so tired and there's so much going on in the world that when I think, for example, about defunding the police, like I draw a blank. I'm like, I don't know what a world would look like that didn't have police because it's so ingrained in our society. And I've had people to kind of have to explain it to me, like, here's what those calls could look like. Here's what community policing might look like. And then I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad that other people have the presence of mind to be dreaming that big, because I don't feel like I do right now. But it's the same thing for sustainability. It's like, if you dream on the margins and you're just like, how could I do little tweaks? Well, you might do some tweaks that really benefit people, and that's wonderful. But if you're one of those people who can really dream big and think about the systems that we exist in and how they can change in a way that serve more people than they currently do, then you're serving a really amazing service to the rest of us to explain, here's what it could look like. Here's what it would look like if everyone had compost on their front step. Here's what it would look like if everyone had access to electric bikes, whatever it is, whatever you're passionate about. So knowing what sort of systems you work best in, and then dreaming sort of within and outside of those systems. It's not just dreaming, right? Like, it's laying the foundation for future change and future advocacy. So thank you so much, Moji. We're going to do a 5-minute breakout, just 2 people again. And Moji's prompt about finding people to follow up with at the end of the day today, we're going to have a significant chunk of time in small groups, probably about 4 to 5 people. So that will be a great group to utilize for accountability if you want to. So for right now, we're going to do a 5-minute breakout. You'll get that 1 minute. You know what? I totally forgot about asking questions. Someone has a question. I'm so glad somebody put one in there. So Mara asks, how have you maintained profitability in your business during the pandemic? Great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, so that's been a huge challenge. Part of my work is actually going into businesses and analyzing the trash that they produce and helping them understand that and then create action plans to move forward. And so the first pivot that I made at the beginning of the pandemic was transitioning into online workshops. So really shifting my business model. I was going to do a pilot workshop just before the pandemic started, and then realized that I had to go full force ahead into that. So just creating a new service offering was one thing. And 2, really it's the more, I guess, not talked about reality, but understand that my profitability was definitely took a hit. Like it wasn't like I was able to maintain the same thing all the way through the pandemic. I feel like I'm just starting to recover now. So finding ways to just cut costs and save money there so that I'm not just bleeding out money was another way that I stayed afloat in that way.
Okay, a couple more questions. One is very specific. Do you have any recommendations for restaurateurs wishing to purchase sustainable packaging for grab-and-go food and beverage options necessitated by the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And that's tough because of the whole system part of things. So I'm not sure about in Tacoma, but do you have industrial composting in Tacoma available to you?
I don't think so. Julie, do you want to jump in?
Yeah.
I'm just learning the ropes, and that Tacoma Pierce County Health Department application scares the bejesus out of me.
Yeah, I feel like I don't think that there is one. So that's the first problem, is that my easy answer would just be find an affordable way to get compostable and do that. But if you don't have the systems in place, that's not really helpful advice. So yeah, it's really hard. And that's one of the big challenges that I work with clients on, is finding what solutions you can do in the place that you live. So I'd be happy to follow up with you later and figure out if we can find a solution for you.
Can I jump in real quick on the composting in Tacoma? I've talked to the city about the composting, and the municipal composting is only for food waste and yard waste. So even like I have a container here, like one of these like cardboard ones that would easily be compostable in Seattle's municipal composting is not accepted in Tacoma because the private company that we go through won't accept them. So it's the private company that Tacoma goes through, not necessarily the city. It's something that they're aware is a problem, but they don't have a solution for it at the moment.
Thank you, everyone, for your expertise. Okay, at least one more question. Katie says, I really worry about all the items that are not recyclable in Tacoma. Do you have any recommendations on what to do with these kinds of items, like cold cartons, clamshells, and shredded paper? Or do you have any resources that you could direct us to?
Yes, I do have a resource, and she is in this room, Julia Goldstein. She just wrote a book about where does it go. So I would love if you want to chime in and talk about your book and that resource.
Oh, thank you, Moji. Yeah, I put in just a little statistic in terms of access to composting that accepts food waste and packaging, that we have that in Seattle and also on the east side through Mostoken County, but we're really in the minority. So in terms of access to all that stuff that really isn't recyclable, a lot of my message in my book, which is called Rethink the Bins, it comes out in November. I can put a link later if in the chat if people want, but you got to look at the regulations where you live. And it's interesting because we're talking about some of the equity piece. So one way to do it is TerraCycle. And you can buy these boxes and you can put just about like any kind of plastic that's, you know, a recyclable type of plastic that can't be taken in your normal recycling into there. But it's expensive. These boxes cost like $60 to $100, and you're not, they don't last that long. So that's just not a realistic option for many people. I mean, I tried it just to do it, but I'm like, I'm not even going to keep doing that, because it just, you know, when otherwise it's like, what, you know, $15 a month for your curbside. So I would love to see more options. There's a lot of things that need to change in, you know, structurally in terms of how, of the recycling infrastructure. So I don't want to go and hijack any of this, but the short answer is it's complicated, but I have resources to help people just do a few, like we talked before about making just small changes, a few basic practices that can help the recycling system work better. And, you know, think towards that long-term goal and do what little things you can. So I like that message, Moji.
Also, I'm a huge fan of reusing before recycling.
Oh, absolutely.
Reusing before throwing away. So if you have access to a Buy Nothing group, a Green Bee group, or here in North Tacoma, we have something called GREAT. That's like a trade and barter and free group. And so I reach out and I'm like, if I save up all my clamshells, does anybody have a use for them? And some gardeners use them for seed generation, germination, sorry. And then also I'm part of the Food is Free network in Tacoma. So some of the farmers will use them to put out like arugula and things like that at their tables. And so I'm a big fan of, like, if there's anything that you do that creates a lot of waste where you're trying to figure it out, just ask on one of those groups. Or if you're in Tacoma, Nurture Tacoma Women in Non-Binary Business Support Group is the group that I run. You're always welcome to ask in there. So I save all of my padded envelopes and then give them away in bulk. I save all of my air packs, those like really annoying bubble packs that you get in the mail. I save those and pass them on to a specific business. I save my bubble wrap and pass it on to a different business. So I always have this little corner of my basement. And again, this is privileged because I have the space to do this, but I have a little corner of my basement where it's just like weird, like recyclable materials, but that I don't want to throw away. And then once I have like enough of them, I'll just post and I'll say, you know, I have 30 clamshells, who wants them? So, you know, it's not solving the overall problem, but it's like, it at least is reducing sort of my waste. Although I'm sure that some of you have seen the meme recently, it was like that the greatest con ever was convincing people that like the key to fighting climate change is personal recycling, right? Like most of the emissions, most of the real environmental challenges that were happening are happening at the corporate level. But at the same time, like I do generate a lot of trash. We have 4 people and a dog in our household. We generate a lot of trash. So anything I can do to reduce that, I'm trying to. My favorite thing right now is to regrow vegetables from scraps. So if you're new to this and you've never heard of it, like shoot me a message on Instagram or something, and I'll send you a little list. My husband always buys green onions, even though we have them in the garden. So I'll root them, I'll put them in dirt, and then I'll put them out at my food is free table so that other people can enjoy them. You can do it with bok choy and lettuce and just a bunch of other things. So that's kind of my like little funny environmental crusade right now. But you can also make stock from like veggie ends. So if you don't have access to compost, like using those vegetables one more time is a great way to get like additional use out. So I've started making vegan stock from the veggie ends, and then like the broccoli stalks that normally you would throw out. I was like, these are edible. Why do we throw these out? I peel them and I chop them up and I put them in a Ziploc in the freezer. And when I get enough of them to make the stock, and then I get enough of the veggie chunks, I make the stock and make a soup. And if we don't need it as a family, I give it away to a friend, and then you've done something nice for somebody. So it's, again, these are tiny things, right? These are at the margins, but anything that you can do to, I think creatively in your life. You're not just, this is something that we talked about last year, you're not just doing it for yourself. Every time you're reusing something, every time you're bringing your own coffee cup into a coffee shop or asking them about their compostable materials, you're being a hero to someone else. You're being an example to someone else. And so the more little steps that we can take and visibly do them and share about them and share about our gardening journeys or our composting journeys or our zero waste journeys, you're setting the stage for someone else to take that journey themselves. So that's just a little, something I like to think about, where sometimes I get bogged down and I'm like, oh man, all these things I'm doing are so small. And then someone messaged me so excited. She's like, I need veggie stock out of my scraps. Thank you so much for sharing this. And she was so excited. And I was like, okay, this is why we do it, right? This is why we share the journeys that we're going through, because then other people can benefit from them. I think we have one more question from Moji. Let me find it, maybe 2. Oh my gosh, so many things. Okay, so Moji, what is your approach for industrial waste, such as singles or construction waste, where the volume is measured in tons and there is not an existing recyclable or reusable method that makes financial sense for the owner?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I used to actually work in construction. I was a quality manager, so I would walk around and do all the fine tuning at the end of the project. And that's kind of when, at the same time when I started learning about zero waste and seeing it at work also made me really anxious, because there was so much we were throwing out. Like the rework is insane. So one resource that I know is available both in Seattle and Tacoma is called Second Use. And so if you are remodeling or renovating, you can both get used things from that place and also or donate or sell your things to that place. And I know there are other things that are similar like that. But yeah, construction waste is hard. And so it's finding those innovative solutions that don't cost an arm and a leg and are somewhat simple to implement. And I don't know all of those off the top of my head, but something to definitely work on.
And Tacoma has a Second Use as well, and another one called Earthwise. And I think there may actually be a third salvage place, but especially if you have an older house in Tacoma, like many of us do, they often have really cool things that match, that are like 10% of the price as if you tried to buy a new product that matched these old styles. All right, we're gonna do, I think, one more question from Moji. I love that this chat is so like vibrant, but I keep losing things. What was that? I'm sorry. Okay, how can we hold corporations accountable in the future? I know not an easy answer, but she really wants to have this conversation.
Yeah, I think the best answer I have is just continuing the conversation. And so I see my role as continuing the conversation on both an individual and a small business level. So that's where I thrive. But there are people who do, like when they do beach cleanups or trash cleanups, they do brand audits and they send pictures of the trash to those corporations and say, is this your trash, to get people noticing what their impact is. So I think it's just poking and prodding at all of the different levels and continuing to make sure that they know that it's not okay. Because I think that, I think I saw lately that Coca-Cola had said that they surveyed their customers and that we want more plastic bottles, that we prefer it that way. And I don't know who they're talking to, but it's not me. So making sure that they know that those people exist, that we want more sustainable and better solutions, and just keep poking at them.